Sarah Marie Malowitz. I'm the Library and Community Center Coordinator here, and I just want to thank you all for coming. This is amazing. I'm so excited, and I just want to thank you so much. A couple of pieces of business. As you can see, I need to note that we are videotaping and taking pictures tonight, which is not a common practice here at the library. So I need to let you know that cameras are being used. And we want to thank the South Washington County Telecommunication Commission for coming and doing that for us tonight. I feel quite fortunate to be a caretaker of this historic and exceedingly special space, and I hope you'll get a taste of that from our short presentation tonight. We'll begin with a presentation from some of our young patrons.
This is the Newport Wait.
No, I'll hold it. It's okay.
Newport Library is
fun, old, historic,
awesome,
great,
cozy,
calming,
and escape.
The best. At Newport Library, we
read,
study,
play, listen, have fun,
and make friends.
Share, make music,
color, calm down,
drink coffee,
compete.
Whoa!
Good for you.
Compete,
Win,
Learn,
improve. I go to Newport Library and Community Center because
it's fun.
I can enjoy myself.
The service is great.
I like the staff and the activities.
I can work in peace.
I can hang out.
And
we all just that one librarian.
Hey, she's a great one.
Okay, before you guys move, I would like you to introduce yourselves. And why don't you tell us what grade you're in school?
I'm Nick. I'm in 6th grade.
I'm Brody. I'm in 6th grade.
My name's Isabella. I'm in 6th grade.
I'm Veda and I'm in 5th grade.
My name's Chloe and I'm in 6th grade.
My name's Soraya and I'm also in 6th grade.
Great.
Thank you all.
Yeah, we have
You can go take a
the
seat.
5th grader.
I noticed she's the leader, however.
Okay, thank you guys. You can go sit down. Good job. Thank you. As you can see, while this space is old, it is also vibrant. The youth play a great part in keeping this place exciting and fun. Beyond crafts, the kids share in activities together much of the year. We have many different activities, including a youth-led escape room, reading competitions, reading groups, and talent shows. Like the holiday review coming up in December, I'd also like to point out that the children didn't just decorate for tonight, they read. Each ring on these multicolored chains represents 15 pages of reading. Our top reader, who happens to be the 5th grader, has 167 rings on her chain. That works out to 2,505 pages, ladies and gentlemen. All told, you are looking at 600 links, representing a total of 9,600 pages since November 1st.
November 1st?
Since November 1st, so roughly 3 weeks.
Wonderful job.
At this time, I'm going to ask Denise to help me out and bring the stuff for the coloring contest awards. Okay? Thank you. Okay. So the coloring contest sheets are also up on the wall. And, oh, where'd she put, there it is. Okay. So if these children are here, please come forward. Bella, Chloe, Charlotte, Veda, Isaiah, and Nellie. You guys can switch them around if you like. These are participation awards. I'd also then like to ask Carol and Haley to come up. In the children's division, which was ages 0 to 6, They colored pictures of the building, and Carol's not right here. Okay, so Carol received the award for the children ages 0 to 6, and Carol is Chloe and Veda's sister, so I'll give that to her. And then Haley receives the award for the children ages 11 to 18. There was, the winner for the in-between group is not here tonight, and that's my daughter, Josie. I was not one of the judges. Okay, thank you guys. It is now my great pleasure to introduce a woman who, for most of you, needs no introduction, Mrs. Jo Bailey. Jo has been a member of the Library Advisory Committee for so many years, I can't count. She currently serves as the president and has been a champion of the Library and Community Center. I can honestly say that this evening would not have happened without her. And Jo will now share some information about Newport Library's history.
Oh, thank you, Sarah Marie. I don't think it's working.
It's for the camera.
Oh,
So,
that's
yes.
it. Okay. I've got a loud voice. I had 7 kids. So, yes,
Thank you.
Okay. It is a wonderful pleasure to see this many people here. You know, the planning started some time ago for this, and you think, well, if 10 people come, I'll be really happy. And then you think, well, maybe 25 will come. But this is outstanding, and it makes us all feel so happy. Sarah Maria has worked so hard, and all the children participated. And anyway, we're just happy to see all of you. So you are sitting comfortably in the historic Newport Library. This doesn't work. Oh, shall I talk louder? I can. Okay, good. Okay. So, 1889, it was a very interesting year for America. Some of the things that happened. North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, and Washington joined the Union. Grover Cleveland, for a short while, was the president. Coca-Cola incorporated into a business, turned out to be huge, down in Atlanta, Georgia. And I'm sure all of you know it was a medicine company before it became Coca-Cola. The big land rush in the Oklahoma Territory was going on. The Johnstown flood in Pennsylvania killed over 2,000 people in this year. And July 8th, the Wall Street Journal, first issue, was printed in New York City. That's around a long time. And dear Nellie Bly, who was pseudonym for another name of hers, but she was a very intrepid, wonderful woman pioneer in education and in writing for newspapers. And she decided she could do better than Jules Verne's around the world, in 80 days. And she did it in 72 days, 6 hours, and 11 minutes. And I didn't have time to Google. I thought, well, I want to find out how she did this. It was great. So tonight, we are sitting in this wonderful library, which 130 years ago today was the day that the village of Newport had their council meeting. And through the encouragement of the mayor's wife, Frances James, decided they needed a library here. Now, we only had around 300 people around here. Most of them lived out in the country, and you can imagine that was pretty forward thinking. But her husband was the mayor, and they were from out east, so they knew about the libraries and education, and they both were well-educated, ambitious people. She was a talented artist, so you can see they really could do a lot of good for this community. So because Mrs. James really wanted to have a library, her husband, at the second meeting, was the second thing they did, was to say, yes, we will have a library reading room. So he appointed a little commission of 9 men, because I suppose they didn't know who the women would be on it, and they just took hold of it. They got in touch with the St. Paul Library, the Minneapolis Library. They got ideas about how to go about it, and they were lucky enough to have Mr. James's brother, Frank, who was visiting or something, I don't know, but he stayed for a couple of years without pay, and he's the one who really got the library off the ground. And of course, it wasn't in this building. It was in a little 2-room schoolhouse, which was in the part of Newport that's called Red Rock. And it's very confusing, Red Rock and Newport and what have you. But anyhow, it was in Red Rock territory. And the people were ecstatic here to get this library. It was so wonderful because they could have a place where they could come and get together. You know, and in those days, they didn't have movie theaters to go to, entertainment. They had to make their own. And they were a real cohesive group. Everybody kind of knew each other. And everything sort of revolved around your family, church, and school. And I know that's the way I grew up. I grew up in a small town, and that's just how it was. You knew everything that was going on in town, and those were the 3 mainstays of all the little towns, and that's how it was here, too. So they all pitched in, and the ladies sewed curtains. See, we don't have any curtains here, but we don't need any. And the men painted the rooms, and they got everything, like a little furniture this one gave, and they had 66 books. But they started out 1 month later, and Mr. James Frank did a real good job as the first librarian. And as I said, he didn't take any pay for it at all. He was just happy to do it. And I don't know what his education was, but what he dearly wanted was a dictionary, an atlas, and a clock. Those were his first wants, and the council did give it to him, so that was awfully nice of them. So. Anyway, well, getting back to the James family, you probably wonder a little bit about them so that they were all able to do this. He was an attorney, well known, worked in St. Paul, and I often wonder how he got back and forth every day. You know, did he have a car at those times? You know, a lot of people might have had a car, but I think he went in on the motor. The train that went in to town would be the locomotion for him to go. And his wife and he lived up on top of the hill. They had a mini mansion up there. It was called Harvard Place. And it was, right now, it's where the Newport Methodist Church is. And Steve, we have the new minister from there. Did you know that?
I didn't know that. I'm
Well,
learning every day.
Yes, I bet you are. Well, there is a picture of it over there. Oh, yeah, there it is right there. And it is a beautiful place. And sadly, they did run into some financial problems. And after about 10 years, they had to move. And then a few years later, the house burned down. So that was a tragedy. But the library, it just took off, and it was very successful. So that was November 20th. And in January, they had a little get-together at the library. And as I said, it wasn't this room. It was the little schoolroom where they had it. And they had a little party. They brought in some people whose names you still know. Mr. Otis from St. Paul, that is a big name in St. Paul, came to give a little talk. He was only 2 months old. And they did all that because they were so proud of their library. And they had 66 books. They had 23 newspapers and periodicals. Where they all came from is not known, but that was pretty good. And so there were things for people. They weren't open very much. They were open, I think it was 2 nights a week from 7 to 9:30, and then on Saturday afternoon from 2 to 5. So it wasn't as if they had lots and lots of time, but it was enough for the people, I'm sure, at that time. So an added duty of those council members who started this library was that they had to review every single periodical and book that came into the library. And one of the little librarians must have been quite scandalized now and then because she had to reject a few. She wrote, "Oh, too spicy." It was nothing compared to today. And also got rid of the communist books, which I thought was kind of interesting. That was, well, it was the time of the Russian Revolution in those times, so, you know, they'd know about it. And so they were up to minute on that. So, okay. You wonder about if he didn't take any pay, and they had to get some books, and they had electricity. Well, they didn't get electricity until 1917. So they had kerosene lamps, but still they had to pay for all of that. And they got by with $50 a year money. And I don't know what that would factor out to today's, but it's not a whole lot, that's for sure. So $50 is all they needed, but they'd get donations, and they had subscriptions. That was sort of a popular thing to do, and I think that's just like having a season ticket to something. But they never turned anyone away. Their idea always was to have the free library. It didn't make any difference if you lived in St. Paul or Stillwater, wherever. You could come, and it would always be free. So that was a wonderful thing. They were, I think, probably years ahead of themselves on something like that. So anyway, well, the librarians, we've talked about Mr. Frank, who was the first librarian. And then after that, he was the last man that they had, because I'm sure the rest of them were all busy working with their jobs. But we were lucky enough to have some real capable women, young women, moms. You know, back then, mothers just stayed home, of course. This was just the early 1900s. And I mean, the pay wasn't great. $1 a day, $2 a week they only worked 2 days. And there was no medical insurance, you know, and stuff like that. But I'm sure they just brought the children with them probably and got along. I mean, it was a gathering place. Nobody cared. You know, you didn't have to be real quiet or anything. It's just kind of like libraries should be. But back then, I'm sure if you went into St. Paul, it would have been business oriented, not like our little library out here. But anyway, and did they have a lot of work to do? They would get a load of wood, and they had to carry it down into the basement. Now, I don't know how many of you have been into this basement. I don't know how that all worked, but the basement here. And then they had to chop kindling and chop the wood and start the fire. And they had a wood fire to heat the libraries for many years. It wasn't until 1972, I think it was, when they finally got a proper furnace. And it was always stated, oh, it's always so cold in that library in the wintertime. So the librarians, even though it was a mere pittance, they did earn their money, that's for sure. And there were among some of the really loveliest ladies in town who were at the library. Lolita is sitting here, and her mother-in-law was one of the sweethearts that came. And the women were just plain ordinary ladies. I mean, some of them had been teachers probably, but they were just interested in helping out the community. So it was very, very nice of them. And the one who was here the longest one, and if you're from Newport, you would know Frances Armstrong. She had been an English high school teacher, and she was here for 25 years. But she did run it as a library. And Pauline, you all would remember her, wouldn't you? Yes. But she did a great job. And she was Virginia Yellen's dearest friend. And they were the two people who knew all about the history of Newport. Okay, so there we go. So, well, then I mentioned that things were getting a little bit better. And the little group of Red Rock people decided they needed their school back. Well, so here we were using it for the library. Now what are we going to do? And at the same time, the Baptist church, which was circa 1859, had closed some time ago, and they had still kept the church. And that's this church that we're in right now. And they made a deal with them, which was very good. The library had to agree that the only things they would have in here would be a library and the women's club. Now, I'll talk to you about the women's club in a minute here, because that was something that was a very proper thing to have in a library. And it was okay, they could have plays here, which they did. They'd have little musicals, parties and things, but no dancing. They could never have any dancing. But they all got along, and it was very fine. So I mentioned about the women's club. Back in, well, Francis James started it here in 1902, but it was all over America. And it was an organization for women, and I've seen pictures. I mean, they got all dressed up to come once a month, then they'd hold their meetings here. Now, this looked a little bit different. You know, the staircase wasn't there. This wasn't here at all. There was a baptismal font, and lots of the furniture and things here are original from that church, as well as the butternut tables. I mean, the butternut trees were in the groves around here. So they made use of all the different things that they could from here. So, can you hear me okay back there? Okay, I can ramp it up a little bit. But anyway, they started these, and they had run here for 50 years. And they were very popular. And it was just to give women just a sort of little outing, learn about the world, what was going on. It was sort of a little, like, sociability 101, something like that for them. And they had just minute dues. But this group from here was actually quite well known. And they were always very supportive of the library. They did things for the library and gave them some money and whatnot. But then through the years, women, started to get back to work. More women were in politics and all kinds of things, and they just didn't have time to go to the women's club anymore. So they divested themselves of the women's club, and that was the end of it. And I think that was in 1971. I have to tell you a cute little story. My husband's grandma was Elizabeth Bailey, and she was a member of the club. And she was really good at making jam. So there was going to be a jam making contest for like 5 or 6 states around here. Well, she entered, and of course she won first place. So she got $100 for her club and a trip to Denver, Colorado for herself and her husband. And we never knew if she went out to Denver or not. But I'm sure the club made good use of the $100. We'd love to have that recipe. It was plum jam, as I recall. So anyway, she was interesting. So as I go along, if anybody has any questions about any of this stuff, be sure to let me know. Okay, so years went along here. We're now in this building and have been here, as I say, since 1897. We've done some improvements. It's wonderful. I think that they've kept the beautiful architecture. The one thing we want to bring back is the cupola that stood on the top of the building, but of course it's long gone. And we hope if we can afford it sometime to get one just to make it look as it did that many years ago, because 1859, that is a long time ago. And you wonder how they could do it when we were only a state in 1858. So anyway, but let's see here. So it soon became apparent, well, I shouldn't say soon, we existed in this library all on our own for 90 years without any help from the county at all. We were giving them money because we could go and get some books from them if we wanted. But this was our library. And I remember having a little book budget. It was $100 a year to buy books for this library. But we had to count on everybody giving us things too, of course. But money was scarce back then. But they made it go, and it was a very good, very popular library. Then you could see, and I know with my kids, they just didn't have enough. Well, there wasn't Google and all that. You had to go to the university libraries or in town to make your investigations and stuff for your papers, and it looked like we really had to belong to the Washington County Library. So it took a while, but they gave a good deal to us, and they were very happy to have us, and that nice arrangement lasted for quite a few years until 2011, when the budgets weren't very good, and their library budget went down, and it was either close us up or just give us extremely minimal service and whatnot. So with much talking and much ado, they just decided we would just get out of the county system. And they gave us, we get some special perks, of course. And we always we can go to any library we want. But this is still home, this is the library for us. Anyway, so we have existed now since on our own since 2012. And it is now called the Newport Library and Community Center, and here we are today. And what are we today? Well, we're still this wonderful library We're still in this gorgeous little building that everybody loves to come to. We have really all that we need. I mean, if you're a great reader, of course, you have to go to the bigger libraries. You can't have everything in a little tiny town. But it's a great service as a community center. And I find all over the world, and certainly all over America, it isn't just a library per se. It's a library community center. And it's like the living room for the community. And you can have a class. You see, this is modest, of course, these few little computers here, but they're busy all the time. You get computer classes. You can go and crochet. You can go and quilt. And we can do all that, not all of that here, but we can go. We're right in between Woodbury and Cottage Grove, which are the two biggest libraries here. So we are lucky in that respect. So anyway, we think we're in a pretty good place. So we, as I said, we still have complete service at all the libraries. And for that matter, if you really want to take it a step further, we can order anything we want from any library in America because they're all interconnected one way or the other. So we're very proud of the library, and we hope you are too. I think you are because you all came out tonight to help us celebrate this wonderful occasion. So thank you. I can't tell you how happy we are to see all of you tonight. So, but does anybody have any questions? Yeah.
Can we dance in this library now?
Actually, I think we can. Should we put some music on? Yeah.
Wasn't the library a church before it
It was. It was the Baptist Church for Newport. And then they had to declassify it, and then it became the library. So, good. Well, I'm sure there are many, 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 many wonderful stories around about the libraries, that's for sure. Oh, I had a really funny one. Underneath here someplace is the Baptismal Font. And one of these great women who was the librarian, one day she came, and honest to Pete, there was a big hole in the floor right over that. So instead of calling city for help, of course you couldn't do that, she got out a hammer and some boards, and she just repaired it on the spot. So they knew what to do. They really did. So good. Okay, anything else? Yeah.
What about the library's future? What are the hopes and goals for the...
Well, that is a good question. Is there anybody here from the county library system? Well, of course, we hope this will always be here. And as long as, Newport owns this one. And so we're doing a good service and not having to pay that much, and can go to all the other ones. So I think we're in good shape. We had a few chancy years there for a while, but no, when that time comes when they want to take a library away, then we all have to get out and do something about it, because libraries, and there's so many great quotations about libraries, so they're here to stay. Got it. Anything else? Okay. Well, now it is my pleasure to turn the evening over to our great historian here, Bob Vogel. And Bob is our stalwart planner and mentor for the Newport Historical Preservation Commission. And he has been with us ever since it started in 92 or so.
A lot.
Yes.
A long time.
Yes. He's well known throughout America. He has written many, many books. And he had an interesting thesis for his PhD. He wrote it about the rascal little pirates in the...
Somebody had.
Yes, somebody had to do it. Near New Orleans, I think. So anyway, and he's a big expert on Minnesota history. So thank you, Bob.
It's a good thing.
Good, thanks.
Well, I am the city's historic preservation planner, so I actually work for Joe, and have, I think, since 1992. It's one of the relatively few cities in the United States that has a fully staffed, professionally led historic preservation program, and it's a great little job. There are about 25 historic properties in the city that are actually zoned as what we call Newport Heritage Landmarks, and this is one of the first that was registered right after the program was created. Now, every one of these buildings, mostly they are, has a story. And I got to tell you that one of the reasons that I really rather cherish this job is it's one of the more unusual places I have worked. And I literally work across the United States and a little bit overseas. I mean, this is a very unique community. And the library's story kind of reflects that kind of overarching trend. But there are other buildings that also commemorate even more bizarre people doing unusual things and at strange times that no one else was thinking of. But just in terms of the landmark status of this building, it's obviously a church. And it's a church built from a book. In the mid-19th century, the most popular kind of book in the United States, well, actually the most popular were murder mysteries, but the most popular nonfiction book, I guess, are called architectural pattern books. No one could find an architect or an engineer to build a building, but everybody could find a book that tells you how to do it. And so a whole flood, they're almost like the self-help books today. And they were marketed exactly the same way. But churches, and in this case the Baptists, Pastor Lyons, who is this itinerant preacher who ended up being the pastor here in Newport because the woman who named the town hired him to be her kind of personal clergyman. And his job was to actually establish the church. And not being a trained architect or engineer, he went and got a book and turned to the page that said church, country church, and bingo. And so it has twins and cousins across the landscape of the United States. But it's a little bit unique, and it has these two baptismal, Joe referred to them as baptismal fonts. A little Catholic boy like me envisioned when I was told that story of something like a bucket-shaped kind of thing. Now, these are about 12 by 14. There's one for men and one for women, and they're designed for total immersion. So one of the pleasurable parts of my job for 20-some years has been whenever they change the carpets, I sneak over here and pry a few boards loose so you can actually get an idea of what's going on under there. The building is in very good condition. This is pretty much what it looked like. It's had an awful lot of things done to it, but they've been, on the whole, rather respectful. As Joe also mentioned, we really want to put the cupola back on. There's an old photograph in here somewhere that shows it with this, belfry on the front. And it was a spectacular looking little building. And when it's lit up at night, how many of you have never been in this building before? I should ask this. Yeah, a few. It really looks cool at night. Daytime, maybe not so much. But I also get to teach here, which is a true joy. And I've taught community education classes here. Various authors and I have given our little book reports here. Larry Millett, the architectural historian, he always tells he wants to come back because this was one of the best places he ever lectured, except he could only have 21 guests because there's really only room for 21 chairs, as you've all demonstrated here. 30. Well, you've got them kind of squished in, but that's because these people really like each other. But it's a wonderful experience. It's hard for 21st century people to really get an idea of what the 19th century was like until you get into spaces like these. And it's real easy to kind of feel the intimacy. I mean, this is where the librarian sat on this little throne and kept everybody quiet so they couldn't, utter a peep. And we even know what books the library owned at various times. And we know all kinds of weird stuff like that because they kept meticulous record. This is like the ultimate record-keeping book. The women's club and the ladies they designated as the librarians. And so it's all in beautiful penmanship. It makes me cry because the nuns beat me for years and still couldn't get me to write that good. And they just record everything. We have every program for every meeting of the women's club from 1892 to 1970. And actually, Joe was one of the last of the speakers on their series. Women's clubs are great. they shouldn't have been allowed to go extinct. They should be brought back. They really served a very useful purpose. But this was the perfect place for them to be. And of course, we also have the city records that go with it. So you can read every year the report of the library committee going down the street to the village, what's now the Model Railroad Clubhouse, and giving their report. And they're just daring the council members not to fund them. And you can tell every now and then they hold an illegal meeting and reduce the budget, and the next page shows the women come back and the budget is restored. So it's another trend that keeps on living. So I encourage you, if you want to know more about Newport's historic sites, the city's website has a map and a guide to and a little bit of information about them. You can always call our office if you have a particular one in mind. And we're always looking for students who need a paper topic. I have a drawer full of things we need to task some student with to find out, including it'd be nice to know who this A.S. Lyons was, who did all of the work in 1869 to create the building. And his patron, Mrs. Huguenin, who we didn't even have a name for until a few months ago. We found out her name is Mary. And she's the one who thought of the name of Newport for the community when she got here in 1857. She's from Newport, New York, which if you ever have the occasion to go to the Lakes District in New York, it's one of the prettiest places on earth. And so she bestowed that upon us here, and then went on to found the Baptist Church and indirectly found the library. Her husband, who was the postmaster and in every other office he could find to run for, was also on that first library board, who were all men, even though women didn't have the vote in 1892 or when 1889 when the library was founded. But since the 1860s, they had been allowed to vote in library board elections by Governor John Marshall. So next time you take a trip down Marshall Avenue, it's named after him. The only thing left named after him. That was one of his initiatives. Women could vote for school boards and for library boards, even though almost nobody had a school consolidated school district anyway. And there were very few public libraries, but a little bit of another unusual little gambit of history. So unless anybody has any questions, I promised I'd only talk for 5 or 10 minutes. A big part of my job is not talking too much.
So this was a public library. Everyone was welcome?
Yes. Oh, well, the history of public libraries in the United States, Benjamin Franklin founded the first one. Believe it or not, there had never been a public library anywhere on the planet Earth until the 1740s, when he said, well, what if we took up a collection, bought some books, and then let anybody who could show us they were a citizen of Philadelphia could borrow them. And then if they kept them late, we would charge them money. Talk about inventing the template for libraryism. Although by the time this library gets created, this is when Andrew Carnegie, the richest man in the world, started financing all of his libraries. He built like 2,500 libraries in the United States. And there were only a handful of libraries when he started. And so I'm sure the Newport founders wanted to cash in on that. There was just no way they could get a grant from Andrew Carnegie to build a Carnegie library in a town with 300 people in it. So they did it themselves, which is quite impressive. Another thing Newport does generation by generation, it's like, yeah, we'll just do it, and that's how that happened. But it's always been a public library. It's gone to extraordinary lengths to keep it a community-owned public library, and is a survivor. I mean, this is not a building. Maybe its good luck rubs off on the inhabitants, but yeah. So you got a long answer to a short question. This is why we all get PhDs and do this. This is what we're taught. Anything else? Well, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Oh, well, it's
for
my pleasure.
for coming out today. You were all blessed or cursed, depending on how you want to look at it, with 3 people who can talk about this library for hours on end. But Bob, thank you for coming out tonight, and Joe Bailey, thank you also for speaking. Here's the point where I get to thank a few people. I'd like to thank State Senator Carla Bingham, who came this evening, County Commissioner Wayne Johnson, our former Mayor Tim Garrity, our former Council Liaison Roz Johnson, and our current council members who made it today, our current Council Liaison Lori Elliott, Councilman Bill Sumner, and Councilman Tom Ingham. It means a lot to us. Having said that, I get the joy of handing the mic over one more time, this time to Mayor Dan Lund.
Well, thank you all for being here to celebrate 130 years of success of the Newport Library. Founding it with the second resolution ever by the council is impressive. Keeping it alive for 130 years, I'm sure there are a lot of times where it would have been easier just to kill it, but there's been a dedication in Newport to the library and community center, and many of the people in the room are part of continuing that history. And so I just want to thank everyone for being here to celebrate in the fellowship and success of the Newport Library. And I think you mentioned all the dignitaries. I will mention former Councilmember Pauline Schottmuller is here as well. And I'm sure there's many more folks in the room who didn't get mentioned by name, but your presence is definitely appreciated. So thank you everyone for being here and for learning more about our library and helping make it the success that it's been for the last 130 years.
Thank you. Okay, I am going to share with you some more people I'd like you all to know, and then we will let you get back to fun and festivities, okay? First of all, I'd like to thank the administrative staff, Deb Hill, Deb Schulz, and Travis Brierly. They all came down at some point today, and they've all been great support to me and the volunteers in making this happen. I'm blessed that I come down there and tell them what I'm going to do, and they say, oh, okay, which is helpful. I'd like to thank the public works staff. They're the people we don't see. I very seldom see them. I come in and the things I've asked them are done, which is just a wonderful blessing. They always make sure this place is looking great. They do a great job of taking care of the land. They take care of anything from, fixing my shelves to making sure the lights are on for us. And so I really appreciate their hard work. They also, the chairs showed up like the chair fairy came this morning. And that was wonderful. I really appreciate all that they do for us. I have the honor of introducing some very special people to the library specifically. The Newport Library and Community Center Advisory Committee and the 130th Anniversary Subcommittee. You've met President Joe Bailey, Committee Member Bev Bartle, Committee Member Nathan Knox. Our subcommittee members, Jackie Beals is actually not here with us today. She came down with something and wasn't able to join us. Nancy Wetzel, and Denise Fulmer and Anita Wassmond were also involved. We're all stewards of this library's past, but in my mind, these next people I'm going to introduce are truly stewards of the library's future. And they are my volunteers. And I get really passionate about these people because they mean so much to me and to the library and to all the children. We couldn't do this without them. I couldn't do this without them. So I want to thank Denise Fulmer and her son Sam. Denise is actually the scheduled staff for this evening, and she was the scheduled staff for last night with the children. Last night we had 15 children and 7 adults. So we had a party specifically for the kids last night. I'd like to thank Barb Wilczek, Anita Wassmond, and Cindy Stonky and Sue Bay couldn't make it tonight. But I wanted to make sure that we recognized them because we couldn't do this without them. The volunteers are just wonderful, and I can't thank them enough. That having been said, unless anybody has any questions or concerns, you guys can have some more fun. Thank you again for coming. Please enjoy the cupcakes and, yeah, enjoy each other's company because that's what we're here for. Thank you.